Okay, if you're a cake decorator, you've been through this before where you bake your cake and it turns out too dry, too dense, or it's just crumbling all over the place. It's super annoying when it happens, but what if I told you getting the perfect cake crumb isn't just about the recipe, it's about what goes on in the mixing bowl and in the oven. So in this video, I'm gonna break down how to get that perfect cake crumb every time using my go-to doctored cake mix recipe. So let's start with one of my favorite hacks to keep your cakes moist, and that is steam baking your cakes.
Before I get started with the batter, I'm going to get my oven ready. I placed 2 cookie sheets on the very bottom rack, and I'm going to pour about a cup of hot water into each one. The steam creates a slightly humid environment, which helps prevent the cake from drying out while it bakes. So you're going to get a softer crumb, a more even rise, and that melts in your mouth texture that we all want. And I like to bake at 325 instead of 350. A lower temperature gives the cake time to rise slowly so it bakes more evenly and stays moist. Now we got to mix up the batter. So here's my base doctored mix recipe. It works with just about any flavor of cake mix. So I like to use Betty Crocker, and it used to come in 432 grams, but they reduced it. So there's only about 375 grams per box. So I buy 2 boxes and then I measure out to 432 grams. So I have that food scale on there, and I just put the bowl on there and set it to 0 and make sure that it is measured in grams. And then I'm just going to pour the cake mix in here until I get to 432 grams. So the cake mix is our base. It already has flour, sugar, emulsifiers, and leavening agents perfectly balanced. So we're going to build on that foundation. Then I just take the excess and just store it in an airtight container until I'm ready to use it again. So this recipe calls for 432 grams of cake mix, 1 cup or 120 grams of all-purpose flour, 1 cup or 200 grams of granulated sugar, 1 cup or 240 grams of full-fat sour cream. You can use full-fat Greek yogurt in place of the sour cream, 1 cup or 237 milliliters of whole milk, 3 whole eggs plus 1 extra egg yolk. Now these eggs are at room temperature. All of my other ingredients are cold. I prefer to add an extra egg yolk per every 3 eggs that I use. It just adds a little bit more moisture. And then I want to take a fork and just poke all of the yolks. It'll make it a lot easier to mix in the batter. And I also like to add some clear vanilla. I love Wilton clear vanilla, McCormick clear vanilla, or any kind of vanilla that you like. I prefer to do about 3 teaspoons. So here's what each ingredient is doing to help you get that perfect crumb. The all-purpose flour adds a little extra structure. The extra gluten helps the cake hold its shape and gives it that tight professional crumb that's easy to stack and decorate. The sugar adds more than just sweetness. It locks in the moisture and softens the gluten, keeping your crumb tender instead of tough. And now for the mixing, because how you combine everything can make or break your texture. So I start by whisking the dry ingredients together on the lowest speed, just to evenly distribute everything. Now I'm keeping my mixer on a low speed, but I did slow down this video. My mixer is not mixing that slow. It's just on the stir setting. But we are adding the whole milk now. The fat and the protein in the whole milk adds richness and helps with browning and creates a moist and smooth crumb. It also helps dissolve the sugar evenly. And I'm just mixing that on low until everything is incorporated. And now I want to add the sour cream. This is the magic ingredient. The acidity in the sour cream tenderizes the crumb and keeps the cake really moist for many days. Plus, its fat content gives us that luscious, velvety mouthfeel. And a lot of people ask me why there's no butter or oil in my recipe, and there doesn't need to be any because we are getting the fat from the whole milk and the full-fat sour cream. Now again, I'm putting my mixer on the lowest stirring speed, and I want to incorporate all of that sour cream before I start adding the eggs. Now eggs provide structure and stability, while the extra yolk adds richness and moisture. Just think of it as like insurance against dryness in your cake. Now you don't want to just dump all of the eggs into the mixture. You want to beat them 1 egg at a time. This way the eggs are going to be evenly distributed throughout the batter. And again, I slowed down this video. My mixer is not going that slow. But once I can't see any more of the egg in the mixture, I'm going to add the other one and keep doing 1 at a time until all of them are in there. And again, I always have my mixer on the lowest speed possible while I am adding all of these wet ingredients. And then finally, I don't want to forget to add the vanilla. Besides the flavor, vanilla actually enhances the perception of sweetness and helps balance out any artificial notes from the cake mix. Now, once all of the ingredients are incorporated together, I'm going to scrape the sides and the bottom of the bowl. It's not necessary, really, if you have a scraper blade. I just don't like scraper blades. I think they're messy. I don't think they work as great as scraping it myself. So I just prefer to do it this way. And I'm just taking my spatula and making sure I get all around the sides and on the very bottom of the bowl. So now I'm going to mix this on about a medium speed. It's about a 4 or 5 out of 10 for about 90 seconds. So when you are making a doctored cake mix recipe, you're going to beat the air into it after everything is added. It's different than scratch baking. So again, I only want to mix it for about 90 seconds. That's enough time to really smooth out the batter and incorporate a bit of air into it. But you don't want to beat it so long that you overdevelop the gluten. If you do that, you'll end up with a really dense and heavy cake, and that's not what we want. We want it to be nice and fluffy. And after about 90 seconds, look how beautiful and velvety this batter is. You'll notice that it's thicker than just a straight box mix. That's exactly what we want. It's going to trap air bubbles that expand in the oven, giving your cake a really soft but stable crumb. Now I bake in 2-inch high cake pans, and one batch of my batter fills 3 of these, and I'm getting some of my pan grease on the bottom of all these pans. So this pan grease is just a mixture of Crisco shortening, vegetable oil, and some flour. I do have a video where I show you how to make this, but basically I just do a cup of the Crisco, a cup of the oil, and like 3 or 4 cups of the flour, and I just mix it in my mixer until I get it to that consistency. It's really easy to make. And I'm going to take my pastry brush and just lightly paint a coat on here, all on the bottom and up the sides. And this pan grease is magical. Your cakes will easily release from the pan after you bake them. Now, very important is to use these heating core nails in the very center of the pan. The nail is going to heat up and bake your cake from the center, while the cake pan bakes your cakes from the bottom and the sides. So having that nail in there is going to allow the cake to bake evenly and a lot faster. So sometimes you notice how the sides get done before the middle and your cake is in the oven too long. This prevents that from having to happen. So I just get a little bit of that pan grease down on the top of it and stick it down into the pan. And always just sticking that nail right in the center of the pan. And then I'm going to fill these about 2/3 of the way full. I like to overfill my pans just slightly because I like them to bake up a little taller. You can put a little less in your pans if you prefer. And now let's place them in the oven. You want to make sure they're spaced far enough apart so the air can easily flow. The lower temperature and the gentle steam create a moist, even bake, and the sides aren't going to overcook before the middle sets and the crumb stays soft without the dry edge that some cakes get. And I'm going to bake them for about 40 minutes or until I stick a toothpick near the center of it and it comes out clean. So after 40 minutes, the one in the back was finished, and then I took my tester and just poked a couple different holes around the center to make sure that it was coming out clean, and it is. That one in the back still needs a couple more minutes, so I'm going to remove that one and let that other one bake until it's all finished. And once they're all done, I like to let them cool on the cooktop for about 5 minutes before I wrap them up. So I have some food safe plastic wrap here, and I'm going to remove these from the pan. You see how easily it falls out, and I'm just going to remove that nail that's in the center, and I want to lightly wrap these. Don't wrap them too hard. You don't want to distort the shape, so I'm just lightly wrapping them up, and then I'm going to place them in the freezer. I prefer to store them upside down because I level the tops off so that way it doesn't distort the bottom of the cake. And then the following day I thawed them for about 4 hours, and then I'm unwrapping them just so I can show you what it looks like. And I'll show you how I level it. Since I bake my cakes over the top of the pan, I just trim off the excess there, and then I have my leveler and I am just sawing that little wire through there. And I can remove this top piece and show you the texture. Look, it's a little difficult to tell when I break it open, but it is so moist. You see I'm pressing my fingers in it and you can see the fingerprints. And you see how soft that is? That is the magic of understanding your ingredients and not just following a recipe. It's moist and fluffy and never crumbly.
So there you go. That's how you get the perfect cake crumb using a doctored cake mix recipe. So when you have the right balance of the ingredients, you mix it correctly, and you have that moisture locking magic of the steam baking, it's really going to keep your cakes moist. Now, ever since I've started steam baking my cakes, I don't find it necessary to wrap the outer edge of the cake with a wet towel. A lot of people wrap the cake with a wet towel to help it rise evenly, but I found that if I do that and steam bake my cakes, they take way too long to bake. So I've just found that there's no need for the towel wraps. And just a reminder, I do have my ebook with all of my favorite doctored cake mix recipes. The link is either in the description or in the link tree in my bio, along with all of the other ebooks that I offer. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you're enjoying my tutorials, I would be so grateful if you could buy me a coffee. The link is down below, and you can follow me on socials and check out my website. And if you want to stick around, you can watch this video next and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. And remember, it's cake, have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.